Your car makes a sound it's never made before, a grinding noise right as you pull into a parking lot. And in that split second, before you even open the hood, your brain does the math. Not the math about what's wrong with the engine, the math about what's wrong with your bank account. That split second panic has a name: financial fragility. And according to Bankrate's 2026 Emergency Savings Report, nearly a quarter of Americans have exactly $0 set aside for a moment like this. Zero. Not a small cushion. Nothing. A separate U.S. news survey found something almost as troubling. More than 4 in 10 Americans couldn't cover a surprise $1,000 expense using savings alone. And among people who do have some kind of fund, the median balance has been shrinking, not growing. Here's the part that should really bother you. The advice you've probably heard is to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. For someone already living paycheck to paycheck, that's not a plan. That's a punchline. It's like telling someone who can't run a mile to just go run a marathon. So what actually works when you're already broke? Turns out the answer has almost nothing to do with willpower, and almost everything to do with how your brain handles scarcity in the first place. Let's start with why the standard advice fails so often. Bankrate's own data shows more than half of Americans now carry more credit card debt than emergency savings. Marka Hamrick, Bankrate's senior economic analyst, has pointed out that a lack of liquidity leaves many households with almost no margin when something unexpected hits. One bill, one repair, one missed shift. That's often all it takes to tip someone from stable into a debt spiral. Traditional advice assumes you have leftover income sitting around just waiting to be redirected into savings. If you're broke, there is no leftover. Every dollar already has a job. Rent has a job. Groceries have a job. Gas has a job. The advice was written for a version of you that doesn't exist yet. So, here's the wild part. Financial psychologist Brad Klontz has spent years studying what he calls money scripts, the unconscious beliefs people carry about money, often formed in childhood. One of the most damaging scripts isn't about spending too much. It's the belief that saving is only for people who already have money. That single belief keeps a lot of people from ever starting. The fix isn't a bigger goal, it's a smaller one. Instead of 3 to 6 months of expenses, many financial educators now point to what's sometimes called a starter fund. Not thousands of dollars, just enough to cover one bad week, somewhere around $500 to $1,000. Small enough to feel possible, big enough to actually change what a car repair means for your life. Here's why that number matters so much. It's not really about the amount. It's about what the amount does to your decision making in a crisis. With even a few $100s set aside, a flat tire is an inconvenience. Without it, that same flat tire can become a payday loan, a missed rent payment, or a maxed out credit card that takes years to pay off. Nobel-winning economist Richard Thaler built an entire career studying why people struggle to save, even when they genuinely want to. His research led to something called Save More Tomorrow, a program that automatically increases how much someone saves, timed to future raises instead of today's paycheck. The idea is simple. People don't fight to protect money they never had to give up in the first place. You can borrow that same trick without waiting on a raise. If your bank allows automatic transfers, even $5 a week moved the moment your paycheck lands can build real momentum. It's not about the $5. It's about removing the decision. You stop having to choose to save every single week. It just happens in the background. Roundup apps work on a similar principle. Every time you buy something, the purchase gets rounded up to the nearest dollar, and the spare change slides into savings automatically. A few cents here, a few cents there. It sounds too small to matter, but Thaler's research suggests it's exactly that invisibility that makes it work. Money you never see is money you never miss. But automation only works if there's something left to automate. So, what happens if there genuinely isn't? This is where most emergency fund advice completely ignores reality. If your income barely covers your bills, the answer isn't hiding somewhere in your monthly budget. It's found outside it. A tax refund, a return deposit, a cash gift, anything that wasn't already accounted for in your regular spending plan. Researchers who study scarcity, including behavioral economist Sendil Mullainathan, have found that when people are financially stretched, their brains narrow focus onto whatever crisis is happening right now. That narrowing feels like discipline. It's actually the opposite. It makes it harder to plan even a few weeks ahead, let alone months. That's exactly why windfall money works so well for a starter fund. It never touched your monthly budget. Your brain never adjusted to spending it. Redirecting it into savings doesn't feel like sacrifice because you never counted on having it in the first place. There's another overlooked source hiding in plain sight: things you already own. A gaming console you stopped using, clothes that don't fit anymore, furniture from an old apartment. Selling even a handful of items can generate a starter fund in a single weekend without touching a single dollar of your regular paycheck. Subscriptions deserve a hard look too. The average household is quietly paying for services they forgot they signed up for. Canceling even one forgotten subscription and redirecting that same amount every month can build a meaningful cushion over a year without changing anything about how you actually live. There's a gender gap hiding in this story too. Some surveys put the average emergency fund for women thousands of dollars lower than the average for men. Lower average income plays a role, sure, but so does something less obvious. Women are more likely to be the ones absorbing unexpected household costs first, which means their starter fund gets tapped and drained faster than most advice accounts for. Not every trend in the data is bad news, though. Younger Americans are actually closing part of this gap faster than expected. Recent surveys show a growing share of adults under 44 now report having some kind of emergency fund, even a small one, up noticeably from just a year earlier. Turns out, starting small and starting young might be working better than anyone predicted. There's also a mental trick worth stealing directly from Thaler's research. He calls it mental accounting, the idea that people treat money differently depending on the label attached to it. A dollar sitting in an account literally named car repair fund feels harder to spend on takeout than the same dollar sitting in an unnamed savings account. The money hasn't changed, the label has, and that label alone changes behavior. If you pick up any kind of side income, even occasionally, that same labeling trick applies. Delivery driving for a weekend, selling a skill online, watching a neighbor's dog. The moment that money touches your regular checking account, your brain treats it like normal income, and it disappears into normal spending. Moving it straight into a separately labeled account before it ever mixes with your paycheck is what actually makes it count toward your starter fund. There's also the debt question, and it's a fair one. If you're carrying high interest credit card debt, should you even be saving at all? Many financial educators suggest building a small starter fund first, even a modest one, before aggressively attacking high interest debt. Not because the debt doesn't matter, it absolutely does, but because a fund of even a few $100s can be the difference between one emergency and another one stacked right on top of it, charged straight back onto the very card you're trying to pay off. Every situation is different, and none of this is personal financial advice. If you're dealing with significant debt or a complicated financial picture, a licensed financial professional can help you build a plan around your specific numbers. One more thing worth knowing: that starter fund shouldn't sit in your regular checking account. Separate accounts matter more than people expect. When emergency money lives in the same place as your grocery money, it quietly disappears, $5 at a time, into things that felt urgent in the moment, but weren't actually emergencies. A high yield savings account, ideally at a different bank than your everyday spending, creates just enough friction to stop that bleed. Not locked away, not inaccessible, just separate enough that you have to actually notice you're using it. There's a balance to strike here too. Make the money too easy to reach and it turns into a second checking account. Make it too hard to reach and it stops being an emergency fund at all. The sweet spot most people land on is a savings account with no debit card attached, but with a transfer that only takes a day or two when you actually need it. Slow enough to stop an impulse. fast enough to still be an emergency fund. And here's something almost nobody mentions. Once you use your starter fund, the job isn't done. Refilling it becomes its own habit, one that gets easier every single time because you've already proven to yourself it's possible. So here's where this actually lands. Building an emergency fund when you're broke was never about discipline you don't have. It's about designing a system small enough to survive contact with a real paycheck and separate enough that it doesn't quietly vanish into everyday spending. Start absurdly small if you have to. $5, $10, a forgotten refund sitting in your account right now. None of that is too small to matter because the goal was never a specific number. The goal is building a habit your future self can build on, one flat tire at a time. That grinding sound your car makes one day, it's still going to happen eventually, but what it costs you, financially and emotionally, depends entirely on whether you started building this before you needed it. If this helped you rethink what an emergency fund actually looks like, let me know in the comments what your starter number is going to be. And if you want more of these deep dives into the psychology behind your money, subscribe, because there's a lot more hiding in your bank account than you think.